When I was in school, there were certain teachers, looking back at it now, I can see, really smart for what they did. But at the time, there was something they did that I just did not appreciate at all in the way of their teaching. What they did was something called pop quizzes. It was not something that I ever enjoyed. But they were so smart in doing it because what happened then is those classes that had pop quizzes was you would always be prepared. You'd always maybe do your assigned reading or do the homework ahead of time. Now, I say always, now I want to clarify, most of the time you would be prepared. Those times that you wouldn't be prepared, you'd go to class and your heart would be pounding saying, please, 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 do not make this a pop quiz day, and you'd be living in dread. And so you learn from that, and of course, you learn from this, and hopefully, for the most part, a pop quiz then would help you be prepared and be vigilant for what was going to come. These teachers were very, very smart. Today we hear the parable about the servants who are prepared and vigilant on the arrival of the master. It's almost like a pop quiz for them. They do not know when he is going to come back, but they're prepared, at least in the first parable. They do not know when he's going to come, but they're prepared to open immediately when he comes and knocks. And this is true even in the second or third watch, which means late into the night, they are ready for the coming of their master. Not thinking, okay, he's delayed till tomorrow night, we can go ahead and go to bed. But they keep on watching. They keep on being prepared. And what are they going to receive? What they're going to receive is their master turning around, girding his loins, reclining at table, and waiting on them. This is quite the statement. The master waiting on the servants. This should call to mind, by the way, the Last Supper. And right before the Last Supper, with Jesus washing the disciples' 12 feet. And how the 12 feet of the disciples. And how this is so beautiful of the master serving. Now Jesus goes on to say in this parable, you also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. So this highlights for us that we too are called always to be prepared and to be vigilant for the coming of the Son of Man. And we may think, Father, it's been 2,000 years. He's not coming. That's a bad thought to have, by the way. Right? It does not mean that it's going to happen in our lifetime. We know this. We do not know the hour or the day. But it means as well that we are called to do is always live for that possibility. You never know, in 2 seconds, Christ could come. All right, it didn't happen. But you never know when it could happen. And we must live our life in that way. Instead of this thinking about the future of, I can't wait for tomorrow or next year, or I can't wait for retirement, or I can't wait for that trip. Not a bad thing to wait for, not a bad thing to be excited for. But the most important thing we're called to be prepared for is the coming of Christ. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful way to live. And even if he doesn't come, we also know we never know when he's going to call us home to him. And this is why it's so important that we're always called to be in a time of constant preparation. When we do this, what's going to happen is we will receive the reward of being waited on by God in heaven. What a great reward, and one that God wants to bestow on us. Why? Because we are his beloved children, and he wants nothing more than for us to be with him. But do we want the same? Do we want to be with God? Or are we living for something else or someone else? Are we listening to the first commandment of, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other God besides me? Are we truly living for our life, preparing for the time that we will spend with God or not? These are hard questions once again this week that we have Christ presenting to us in this parable that Luke is presenting. They're meant once again to have us pause and reflect. Who are we living for? What are we living for? A great question that we can ask ourselves once again is if Christ were to come right now, would we be ready? Or are there things that we need to take care of ahead of time? If the answer is yes, that we need to take care of things ahead of time, then we know that we are not prepared. And so this is now that great time, that great reckoning, that great awareness of a time to become prepared and vigilant. Why? Well, we hear in the parable, the second parable, about the servant who was not prepared for the coming of his master, and how he thought that he was delayed and in essence was never going to come back. What happened to him? He does not receive the master waiting on him. Rather, he will be punished severely and assigned a place to the unfaithful. What does this mean literally? It means he'll be cut in two. That's what it means in the Greek. He'll be cut in two and placed in Gehenna, the place of death. So one reward is being waited on by God in heaven. The other reward, or not reward, punishment, is being placed without Christ, which is death. What servant are we going to be? What servant are we going to be in our life? Who are we waiting on? Who are we living for? Who do we truly treat as our master, or what do we treat as our master? Now, it's hard because we don't know when this reward is going to come. And it's a reward that we're never actually going to receive in this lifetime. But remember that this world is not our final destination. We are simply, as we hear in the second reading today, strangers and aliens on this earth. Once again, we must be living for something greater than this world can ever give us. We can look all we want for this world, for worldly pleasure, but it's never going to fulfill what we're actually longing for. We must prepare for our treasure where? We must place our treasure in heaven. Our treasure stored up in the things of heaven and not on this earth. Where our heart is also where our treasure is. Where is our heart? Is it focused on God, or is it focused on worldly things? Remember this week, what do we need to do in our life right now to make sure that we are ready for Christ's coming, or is calling us home to him? And so in order to do this, let us gird our loins and light our lamps and be like servants who await their master's return from a wedding, ready to open immediately when he comes and knocks.